The courtroom had a rhythm, a dull murmur of shifting chairs, the shuffle of papers, the occasional cough from someone half asleep on a wooden bench. But underneath it all was something colder, more permanent, like concrete hardened into bias. Judge Raymond Lancaster sat above it all, literally and figuratively. 30 years in that chair had made his judgment swift and practiced. He didn't need facts. He needed a glance. And today, that glance landed on her. A young black woman, maybe 19, worn jeans, a plain blouse, natural hair pulled back neat, no jewelry, no makeup, just standing there quietly. He didn't even lift his eyes at first. Didn't have to. He had already filed her away. Another mouthy little thing. Attitude, entitlement, zero accountability. He had seen her 100 times before, or so he thought. Lancaster adjusted his glasses and tapped a lazy rhythm on the bench. He skimmed the file like it was beneath him.
Miss Daniels,
he said, dragging her name out like a bad taste. He cleared his throat with exaggerated boredom.
says here you were arrested for interfering with police business, resisting arrest, disorderly conduct.
He waved vaguely toward the prosecutor, who didn't bother to look up.
Frankly, it doesn't matter. You were told to move, and you didn't. That's a problem.
Laughter rippled from the back rows. Spectators, regulars. They weren't here for justice. They were here for the show. And Lancaster, he loved being the ringmaster. 2 officers leaned against the back wall, arms folded, smug grins growing. They had cuffed Amira 3 days earlier. They were sure they'd see her go down today. Amira said nothing. She didn't shrink. She didn't cry. She didn't plead. She just stood there. And that silence, it unnerved him. Lancaster cocked his head.
Miss Daniels, do you think this is a joke?
Still, she didn't speak. Just met his gaze. Steady. Controlled. He smiled. A thin, condescending thing.
Well, maybe if you paid more attention in school, you wouldn't be standing here today.
That was the moment. The snap in the air. The courtroom didn't gasp. Not quite. But it shifted. A hush rolled in like smoke under a door. Even the prosecutor looked up. Even the bailiffs moved slightly. Because they knew you don't say that to someone unless you're sure. And Lancaster had no idea how wrong he was. See, Amira Daniels wasn't just another black teenager. She wasn't lost, confused, or scared. She had passed the bar exam at 18. She was standing in that courtroom as part of an active investigation, one the judge knew nothing about. And he had just walked right into it. And that's when she started. With a truth so sharp, it would cut the whole courtroom open. The silence that followed his insult was thicker than before. It wasn't just quiet. It was loaded, heavy, like the walls themselves had paused to listen. Amira didn't move, not at first. She just inhaled, slow, steady, like she was holding something back. Then, without a word, she reached into her bag. The bailiffs shifted. The prosecutor squinted. Even the spectators leaned forward. Judge Lancaster rolled his eyes. Another speech, another sob story, another, "Your Honor, if you would just understand." But it wasn't that. What Amira pulled out wasn't a letter. It wasn't a statement. It was a case, a slim black leather case, professional, clean, intentional. She laid it gently on the defense table, clicked it open, and inside, a gleaming, laminated bar card. Shiny, unmistakable, official. Lancaster's fingers froze mid-tap. The sound in the room disappeared. For a second, just 1 second, no one knew how to breathe. Then she spoke. Her voice cut through the air like a razor. Clear, calm, controlled.
Your Honor, I did pay attention in school. I graduated law school at 18, passed the bar on my first attempt, and I'm here today not as a defendant, but as an undercover legal investigator with the Judicial Integrity Project.
3 full seconds passed before anyone reacted. Then chaos, but quiet chaos. Gasps sucked in through tight throats, heads turning, eyes wide, mouths parted in disbelief. The judge blinked like he was trying to reboot his own memory. The prosecutor, Richard Calloway, sat up straight, frantically flipping through papers. The officers near the back, suddenly not so smug.
Is she serious?
She's a lawyer? What the hell is going on?
But Amira wasn't rattled. She wasn't gloating. She wasn't smiling. She just stood there, still and steady, watching them all scramble to catch up to the truth. Judge Lancaster's smirk had vanished. His eyes narrowed, scanning the card on the table as if hoping it would disappear. But it didn't.
This is ridiculous. A stunt. A lie. Calloway, is there any record of this woman being a licensed attorney?
Calloway hesitated, hands flying across his keyboard.
I don't know, Your Honor. I'm checking now.
His face had lost all its color. Lancaster turned back to Amira, red rising in his cheeks.
So what? You think this changes anything? You still interfered with an arrest.
Did I?
The question landed like a slap. Then again, slow and deliberate, she reached into her bag. The entire room watched, frozen. Even the bailiffs didn't breathe. This time, she pulled out a slim folder and placed it flat on the table.
Your Honor, this is the full body cam transcript from the officers who arrested me. It shows I asked a single question. What's the charge? That's all. No threats, no interference, no obstruction.
One of the bailiffs picked up the folder and handed it to the judge. Lancaster opened it reluctantly. His eyes flicked over the first few lines. His jaw clenched. Amira continued.
The Supreme Court ruled in Houston v. Hill, 1987, that speech alone does not constitute obstruction unless it directly interferes with law enforcement. She looked him dead in the eye. Asking a question is not a crime.
Lancaster gripped the folder tighter.
That's not for you to decide.
No, but it's already been decided by the highest court in the land.
She didn't raise her voice. She didn't shout, but every word struck like a hammer. The murmurs grew louder. Reporters in the back began taking frantic notes. Spectators leaned in, eyes wide. Lancaster turned to Calloway.
Well?
Calloway cleared his throat, barely audible.
Your Honor, she's a licensed attorney. Her credentials check out.
The air cracked. The room had been tense before. Now it was explosive. And Judge Lancaster? He wasn't just facing a smart girl with an attitude anymore. He was staring down a trained lawyer with facts, precedent, and receipts. But Amira didn't stop. She stepped forward slowly, placing her hands flat on the table. Her voice dropped, more intimate now, forcing the judge to really listen.
And while we're here, she said, there's something else we need to address. Your Honor, I've been reviewing your sentencing records over the last 10 years, and a troubling pattern has emerged.
The temperature in the courtroom dropped. She reached into her bag one more time and pulled out a thick stack of documents. Heavy, labeled, tabbed, ready.
Would you like to discuss the statistical breakdown of your racial sentencing disparities?
Because what Amira had just done wasn't just a reveal. It was the opening salvo in a war she came ready to fight. The folder sat on the table, unopened, untouched, but heavy, like it was pulling the whole courtroom toward it, because it wasn't just paperwork. It was proof. Proof of what black folks had known for decades. We get harsher sentences. We get fewer chances. And when we stand in front of that bench, our skin speaks louder than our story. Amira opened the file. Her hands were steady, but her silence said everything. She was about to do what generations had dreamed of: hold power accountable with receipts.
I want to begin with a case from 5 years ago.
She slid out the first page.
A white college student, arrested for disorderly conduct and resisting arrest. Charges dismissed. Judge said it was youthful indiscretion.
She held up the next sheet.
A black high school senior. Same charge, same circumstance. He got 60 days in county jail.
The courtroom didn't move. Lancaster didn't blink, but his hands twitched just slightly. Amira kept going. 2 drug possession cases, both first-time offenders, white defendant, probation, black defendant, 3 years.
And that's just 2 examples. I've reviewed hundreds.
A reporter in the back dropped their pen. Someone in the gallery whispered, "Jesus." And Prosecutor Calloway sank in his chair. Amira raised her head. Her voice didn't shake, but her eyes, they carried every grandmother who sat in a courtroom watching her grandbaby sentenced like he was disposable.
I read every ruling you've written, Your Honor, every judgment you signed, and you know what I found? This system, it's not broken. It's doing exactly what it was designed to do. To punish blackness, to silence us, to shame us, then call it order. You sentenced black defendants on average to nearly double the time as white ones for the same offenses.
Someone in the back gasped. A woman clutched her purse like it was holding her upright. A man whispered a prayer under his breath.
This isn't a mistake. It's a pattern hidden in plain sight, in court transcripts, in sentencing logs, in the tears of every mother who walked out of this building empty-handed.
Lancaster tried to speak, but nothing came out, because she wasn't just addressing him anymore. She was addressing the room, the people, our people.
Some of you in here, you know this already because you lived it. You watched your child, your brother, your cousin get locked away while their white classmates walked free.
She turned back to the judge.
So today, I'm not just defending myself. I'm putting this system on trial.
No one clapped. No one cheered. They were too stunned, too shaken, because the truth she spoke wasn't new. It was just finally being said out loud in a courtroom by someone who knew exactly how to make it count.
I have data, statistics, transcripts, patterns. If you rule against me today, it won't be just another decision. It will be another data point in a mountain of evidence proving judicial bias in your courtroom.
The air in the room turned sharp, cold, heavy, like every injustice that had ever passed through this courtroom had come back to witness this moment. Amira wasn't yelling. She wasn't begging. She was doing what too many never had the chance to do: tell the truth and be heard. She wasn't alone. An elderly man in the second row bowed his head. A woman gripped the armrest beside her. 2 teenagers exchanged wide-eyed looks like they'd just seen the future show up in the flesh. Because what Amira was saying wasn't just about her. It was about all of us. All the ones who got told to sit down. All the ones who never made it out. All the ones we lost to silence. Judge Lancaster opened his mouth again, but it was too late. The courtroom no longer belonged to him. It belonged to the truth. Because once the numbers speak, once the stories align, even power has to listen. The moment cracked open like thunder. Calloway, the prosecutor, shifted in his seat, his face pale, his hands twitching. He looked at Amira, then at the judge, then back down at the folder in front of him, like maybe if he stared hard enough, he could disappear into the paper. Amira didn't blink. She saw the fear, she saw the conflict, and she leaned in.
Mr. Calloway, as the prosecutor, you have the discretion to drop these charges right now.
The room tensed, like everyone had just heard a gun cock. Calloway swallowed hard. His mouth opened, closed. Then finally, he exhaled. He turned to the judge.
The prosecution withdraws all charges, Your Honor.
Gasps tore through the gallery. Click, click, click. Reporters pounced on their keyboards. Phones raised. Cameras flashed. The story was writing itself in real time. Lancaster's jaw locked. Color drained from his face. His grip on the gavel turned white-knuckled.
You can't be serious.
He muttered, his voice thin, almost hoarse. But Calloway wasn't looking at him anymore. He was looking at Amira.
I was part of this system. I won't defend it anymore.
You could feel it, like the air itself had shifted. The judge's courtroom was no longer his. Amira had turned the tide, and the current was crashing down. Judge Lancaster tried to speak again.
This is highly inappropriate.
No, Your Honor. What's inappropriate is decades of bias hidden behind your robe.
She stepped forward, unshaken, unbothered, unapologetic.
You sat on that bench for 30 years and handed out harsher sentences to black kids for the same mistakes their white classmates made. You stole futures, you broke families, you played God with our lives.
Lancaster's eyes darted, searching for help, for an answer, for anything to hold on to. But it was too late. The courtroom doors opened. 2 uniformed officials stepped inside, badges glinting, clipboards in hand. Everyone turned. You could hear a pin drop. The lead officer stepped forward, voice booming.
Judge Raymond Lancaster, due to ongoing investigations into judicial misconduct, you are hereby placed on immediate suspension pending further review.
Chaos. The courtroom erupted. Cheers, gasps, cries of disbelief. Reporters leapt to their feet. Lancaster stood frozen, staring at them, then at Amira, then back at the ground. This was a man who had never been questioned, never been challenged, and now he was being escorted out of the very room he once ruled. He looked smaller than he ever had. Amira watched it all, quiet, still, no fist in the air, no smile, just presence. Because this wasn't about gloating. It was about justice finally breathing again. She reached for her documents, slipped them back into her bag, adjusted her blazer, and stood tall. Behind her, one person clapped, then another, and another. Soon, the courtroom echoed with applause. Lancaster didn't look back. He couldn't, because everyone was standing for her now. Amira turned to the crowd. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to.
For years, men like Judge Lancaster sat in silence while entire communities were punished. But today, the silence was broken.
The applause swelled again. But Amira wasn't done. She turned back to the judge, still being led away.
Before I go, Your Honor, just know this. The complaint filed against you has been expanded. All the evidence I presented today, it's being submitted formally as part of the ongoing investigation.
Lancaster paused mid-step. His spine stiffened. He knew what that meant. Review boards, ethics panels, possibly disbarment. He tried to speak.
You can pound the gavel all you want. It won't unwrite what's already in the record.
Calloway, still seated, rubbed his forehead. He knew it too. This wasn't just the fall of a judge. This was the cracking open of an entire system. And Amira Daniels had done it with no badge, no backup, just the truth and the law on her side. Amira stepped out of that courtroom not as a girl who beat her case, but as a woman who shook the system. The cameras were waiting. The microphones were raised. Questions flew at her like arrows. But she didn't flinch. She wasn't there for spectacle. She was there for justice. And justice had just found its voice. She walked slowly, deliberately, down the courthouse steps. And in the crowd, she saw her. A black woman, late 50s, no press badge, no microphone, just standing there, arms crossed tight, eyes filled with something between disbelief and hope. Amira knew her. Lena Warren, sister of a young black boy who was once sentenced to 90 days for the exact same charge a white student had walked away from scot-free. Their eyes met, and for a long moment, no words, just two women from different generations connected by a quiet understanding. You saw it. You stopped it. You made them listen. Lena nodded. It was small, but it was everything. Because that nod wasn't just for Amira. It was for every mother who sat in court holding her breath, every grandmother who lit a candle and prayed, every community member who marched when no cameras came, every time we whispered, "This ain't right." But no one believed us. Now they do, because Amira Daniels made them look, made them listen, made them answer. And this victory, it didn't erase the pain, didn't bring back lost years or lost sons, but it gave us something we hadn't felt in a long time: acknowledgement, a sense that for once we weren't invisible, not dismissed, not reduced to just another case, not silenced with legal terms we never had the power to fight. Amira stood for more than herself. She stood for the boy who got pulled over and never made it home, the girl who got expelled and never got a second chance, the father who lost his job after being arrested for nothing. The stories we carry, the ones we were told no one would believe. And when she stood there, defiant but calm, professional but proud, we all stood with her. This wasn't the end of a trial. It was the beginning of a reckoning. A generation raised to believe that courtrooms weren't for us had just seen one of us walk in, speak up, and win. That matters. Because what heals a wound deeper than time? Being seen, being heard, being believed. That day, in front of that courthouse, we didn't just witness justice. We felt it. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like ours. But just as she turned to leave, just as peace finally settled in, a message came through. The crowd was thinning, reporters packing up, the courthouse fading behind her. But Amira wasn't done, not yet. She reached into her pocket to silence the buzzing phone. Just noise, she thought. But then she saw it. Unknown number, one new message. We should talk. I have something you'll want to see. No name, no context. Just 7 words that hit like a trigger. She stood still. Everything else kept moving. Cars, people, cameras. But her world narrowed to that screen. It didn't feel random. It felt precise, targeted, timed. She read the message again, then a third time. Her fingers hovered over the reply, but didn't move, because deep down, she knew this wasn't over. Winning one courtroom battle doesn't dismantle a system built on silence. It doesn't fix years of record sealed with injustice. It doesn't bring back the names we buried before they had a chance to be remembered. This question mark, this was just the beginning. She looked up, toward the city, toward whatever came next. And then she started walking, away from the courthouse, away from the cameras, toward something bigger, toward whoever sent that message, toward the next name in the file, toward the next crack in the system. Because justice isn't a moment, it's a movement. And now that Amira Daniels had found her voice, she was about to use it to bring down something even bigger.